What if I told you that a single library card, worn and forgotten at the bottom of a backpack, would become the thread that stitched together 3 shattered lives? That one accidental encounter on a Wednesday afternoon would prove that family isn't always about DNA, but about who shows up when your world is falling apart. Before we dive into this story, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt so broken that even breathing felt like too much work? Have you ever watched someone you love slip away into silence, unable to reach them no matter how hard you tried? This is the story of 3 people who had given up hope. A widowed father drowning in guilt, a child trapped in her own mind, and a stranger who had lost everything that made life worth living. By the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this journey is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about healing, hope, and what it really means to save someone's life. Let's begin. Daniel Foster had forgotten what his daughter's laugh sounded like. It had been 18 months since the accident. 18 months since 7-year-old Emma had watched her mother's car get hit by a drunk driver at the intersection 3 blocks from their home. 18 months since Emma had stopped speaking entirely, her words swallowed by trauma so deep that every therapist Daniel took her to shook their heads with the same sad, professional sympathy. It's selective mutism, they'd say, as if giving it a name made it less terrifying. Caused by extreme psychological trauma. She might speak again when she feels safe, or she might not. We simply don't know. The small apartment in Riverside, New Jersey, felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Photos of Sarah still hung on the walls because Daniel couldn't bear to take them down, and Emma would have a meltdown if anything changed. Toys sat untouched. The piano Sarah had taught Emma to play gathered dust. Daniel worked the overnight shift at a logistics warehouse, coming home at dawn to get Emma ready for school, sleeping in fragments during the day while she was gone, then spending his evenings sitting beside her in silence, both of them prisoners of grief they couldn't escape. Once, Daniel had been a high school English teacher. He'd loved his job, loved watching young minds discover the power of words and stories. But after Sarah died, he couldn't go back. Standing in front of a classroom, teaching about metaphors and symbolism when his own life had become a tragedy he couldn't comprehend. It felt like a cruel joke. So he'd quit. Took the warehouse job because it paid the bills and didn't require him to pretend he was okay. Because he could load boxes for 10 hours straight without having to explain to anyone why his eyes were always red, why his hands shook when he was trying to concentrate. The medical bills from Sarah's final week in the hospital had destroyed them financially. The funeral costs, the therapy sessions for Emma that insurance barely covered, the lawyer fees to fight the drunk driver's inadequate insurance settlement. All of it had buried Daniel under a mountain of debt that felt like it would crush him. He'd sold their house, the one Sarah had loved with its big backyard and the swing set he'd built for Emma. Sold his car. Sold Sarah's wedding ring, though that had nearly killed him. Everything had to go just to keep them afloat. Now they lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a building where the heat didn't work half the time, and the neighbors fought loud enough to keep Emma awake at night. Not that she complained. Emma didn't complain about anything anymore. She just existed in her silent world, her green eyes watching everything with an intensity that broke Daniel's heart every single day. The school had been understanding at first, but now, in 2nd grade, Emma's silence was becoming a problem. She wouldn't participate in class, wouldn't read aloud, wouldn't speak even to answer yes or no questions. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had started sending concerned emails that Daniel couldn't bear to read. "We're worried about her social development," the emails would say. The other children don't know how to interact with her. Perhaps you should consider alternative educational options. Alternative educational options. That was code for, your broken child doesn't fit in our system. On this particular Wednesday afternoon in October, Daniel sat in the parking lot of Emma's school, waiting for dismissal. He was so tired, so devastatingly, bone-deep tired that he sometimes wondered if he'd ever feel rested again. When Emma emerged from the building, walking alone while other children ran and laughed and shouted to their friends, Daniel felt the familiar knife twist of helplessness in his gut. She clutched her backpack to her chest like a shield, her eyes fixed on the ground. "Hey, Emma Bear," he said softly as she climbed into the car. "How was school?" She didn't answer. She never answered. But she did what she always did. She pulled out a small notebook from her backpack and wrote in careful, childish handwriting, "Okay." It was the only way she communicated now. Short, simple notes. Never more than a word or two. As if even writing took energy she couldn't spare. They drove home in silence. Daniel had stopped trying to fill the quiet with one-sided conversation. It hurt too much, talking to someone who wouldn't talk back. That evening, as Emma did her homework at the kitchen table, Daniel sorted through her backpack to check for school notices. That's when he found it. A library card. Not theirs. Someone else's. Old and laminated. The corners worn soft from years of use. The name on it read, Iris Tanaka-chan. Daniel frowned. Emma must have picked it up somewhere by accident. He made a mental note to return it to the school's lost and found tomorrow. But then Emma noticed what he was holding. For the first time in months, he saw something flicker in her eyes. Interest. Urgency. She grabbed her notebook and wrote frantically, "Library. Please." Daniel stared at those two words. Emma hadn't expressed interest in anything since the accident. Hadn't asked to go anywhere, do anything. And now she wanted to go to the library? "You want to return this card to its owner?" he asked gently. Emma nodded vigorously, then wrote, "Nice lady. Books. Please, Daddy." Something in Daniel's chest cracked open just slightly. If Emma wanted to do something, anything, he would move heaven and earth to make it happen. "Okay, Emma Bear," he said, his voice thick. "We'll go to the library. Right now." Iris Tanaka-chan had given up looking for her library card 3 weeks ago. At 71 years old, she'd lived long enough to know that some things, once lost, never come back. Library cards, wedding rings, daughters who promise to visit but never do. Hope. She sat in her usual spot at the Riverside Public Library, the worn armchair by the window in the reference section where nobody bothered her. This had become her home more than the senior living facility where she officially resided. The library was warm. It had bathrooms that didn't smell like antiseptic and loneliness. And the books, the books were the only friends she had left. Iris had been a professor once. Taught literature at Princeton for 40 years. She'd published papers, mentored hundreds of students, and lived for the magic that happened when young minds discovered Shakespeare or Toni Morrison for the first time. But retirement had come with a brutal realization. Her entire identity had been wrapped up in her work. When that ended, when the university gave her the gold watch and the obligatory party and sent her on her way, Iris discovered she had nothing else. No husband. He'd left 30 years ago for a younger colleague. No children of her own, the career had always come first. Her daughter from her first marriage had been raised primarily by her ex-husband and his new wife, and their relationship had never recovered from Iris's absence during those crucial years. She tried to reach out, sent cards on birthdays and holidays, made awkward phone calls that her daughter Jennifer answered with polite distance. But the damage had been done decades ago, and no amount of late-life regret could undo it. I sacrificed my family for my career, Iris had told her therapist during their final session before her insurance ran out. And now I have neither. The senior living facility was clean and safe, but it was also where people went to wait for death. Iris's studio apartment was barely big enough for a bed and a small bookshelf. Her Social Security covered rent and little else. She ate one meal a day at the facility's cafeteria, then stretched whatever was left to last until the next month. Most days she came to the library. It was free. It was warm. And nobody asked questions about why an old woman spent 10 hours a day reading in the same chair. The librarians knew her, tolerated her. Sometimes they even smiled sympathetically when she checked out her maximum limit of books. Always fiction, always stories about families and connections and happy endings she would never have. On this Wednesday evening, Iris was reading End of Green Gables for the 100th time, letting herself get lost in the story of an orphan girl who found a family against all odds. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the man and little girl approaching until they were standing right beside her chair. "Excuse me," the man said softly. "Are you Iris Tanaka-chin?" Iris looked up, startled. The man looked exhausted, wearing a warehouse uniform with his name tag still pinned to his chest. Daniel. He had kind eyes, though they were shadowed with the kind of sadness Iris recognized intimately. Beside him stood a little girl with dark hair and braids, green eyes too solemn for her age, clutching a notebook to her chest. "Yes," Iris said cautiously. "I am." The little girl stepped forward and held out something. Iris's library card. "You found it?" Iris breathed, taking the worn card like it was made of gold. "Where?" The girl didn't answer. Instead, she opened her notebook and showed Iris what she'd written. "In the park, near school. I kept it safe." Iris looked at Daniel, confused. "She doesn't speak," Daniel explained quietly. "There was an accident. She saw her mother die. She hasn't spoken since." The words hit Iris like a physical blow. This beautiful child, this precious little girl, had witnessed something no child should ever see. And now she lived in silence, trapped in her trauma just like Iris was trapped in her regrets. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Iris asked gently. The girl wrote, "Emma." "Emma," Iris repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "That's a beautiful name. Thank you for returning my card, Emma. It means more to me than you could possibly know." Emma wrote something else and showed it to Iris. "You check out lots of books. I see you here sometimes. You read fast." Iris felt tears prickling her eyes. Someone had noticed her. This child, living in her own isolated world, had still noticed a lonely old woman in a library. "I love books," Iris said, her voice catching. "They're my best friends." Emma nodded seriously, then wrote, "Me too." Daniel cleared his throat. "I'm sorry to disturb your reading. We just wanted to return this to you." Emma insisted. Something in Iris's chest shifted. An impulse, sudden and inexplicable. "Would you like to sit?" she heard herself asking. "Both of you?" "I was just about to take a break." Daniel hesitated. He probably had a million things to do, a million reasons to say no and leave. But Emma was already pulling out the chair next to Iris, her face showing more animation than Daniel had seen in months. "Sure," Daniel said, surprising himself. "Just for a few minutes." Those few minutes turned into an hour. Iris asked Emma what books she liked. and Emma wrote her answers in her notebook, showing Iris each response with careful deliberation. Fairy tales, stories about magic, books where the hero wins in the end. Have you read The Secret Garden? Iris asked, and Emma shook her head. Without thinking, Iris stood and walked to the children's section, Emma following like a shadow. She found her battered old copy. The library let her keep books that were being retired from circulation, and held it out. "This was my favorite when I was your age," Iris said. "It's about a little girl who's lost everything and finds healing in the most unexpected place. I think you might like it." Emma took the book with reverent care, then wrote, "Thank you. Will you tell me about it?" And just like that, Iris found herself telling Emma the story of Mary Lennox and Dickon and the secret garden that brought dead things back to life. Daniel watched in amazement as his daughter, his silent, withdrawn daughter, leaned forward with interest, her eyes bright for the first time in over a year. When the library's closing announcement came over the speakers, all three of them looked surprised at how much time had passed. "We should go," Daniel said reluctantly. "Thank you for this, for talking with her. You have no idea what it meant." But Iris could see it did mean something. She could see it in the way Emma clutched the book, in the way Daniel's shoulders had relaxed just slightly during their conversation. "Come back," Iris said impulsively. "Tomorrow, same time. I'll be here. I'm always here." Emma wrote quickly, "Can we, Daddy? Please." Daniel looked at this old woman who had somehow reached his daughter when nobody else could. "Yes," he said, "we can do that." They came back the next day, and the day after that. Within a week, it had become their routine. Daniel would pick Emma up from school, and instead of going straight home to their silent apartment, they would go to the library. To Iris, to the woman who had somehow become the first person Emma wanted to be around since Sarah died. Iris was always there, waiting in her chair by the window. She'd have books ready, stories chosen specifically for Emma. She'd write questions for Emma to answer, never pressuring her to speak, respecting the silence that was her protection. But she also talked to Daniel. Those conversations started awkwardly, two damaged adults making small talk while a traumatized child read quietly between them. But gradually, carefully, they began to share their stories. Iris told Daniel about her career, her ex-husband, her estranged daughter. "I was so busy building my legacy," she said one evening, her voice hollow with regret, "that I forgot to build a family, and now I have neither. My published papers are collecting dust in libraries. My students have forgotten me. And Jennifer, my daughter, sends me a card at Christmas. That's the extent of our relationship." Daniel had shared his own story, the accident, the medical bills, the crushing weight of trying to keep Emma alive when he felt barely alive himself. "I failed them both," he said quietly one evening after Emma had fallen asleep in her chair, a book open on her lap. "I couldn't save Sarah, and I can't reach Emma. She's right here, but I've lost her too." "No," Iris said firmly. "You haven't lost her. She's still here. She's still fighting. You both are." "I don't know how much longer I can fight," Daniel admitted, the words costing him everything. "I'm so tired, Iris. I work all night, sleep in fragments, spend every waking moment worrying about Emma. The bills keep piling up. The school wants to move her to special education. I can't afford the therapy she needs. And I don't know what to do anymore." Iris reached across and took his hand. Her skin was papery with age, but her grip was strong. You do what you're doing now. You show up. You love her. That's enough, Daniel. That has to be enough. The three of them became an island of healing in a world that felt too sharp and too painful. Iris began teaching Emma things, not formally but naturally. She showed her how to press flowers between book pages, how to write in a journal, expressing feelings when speaking felt impossible, how to lose yourself in stories when real life was too hard to bear. Emma started smiling again. Small smiles at first, tentative as spring flowers after winter. But they were real, and each one felt like a miracle to Daniel. For Iris, having Emma and Daniel in her life was like discovering water after years in a desert. She had purpose again. Someone needed her. Not for her degrees or her publications or her professional expertise, just for herself. For her time and her attention and her willingness to see a child's pain and not turn away. The library staff noticed the change in all of them. The sad little girl who came in silent now stayed for hours, reading with fierce concentration. The exhausted father who'd had defeat written all over him started to stand a little straighter. And the lonely old woman who used to sit alone from opening to closing now had a family gathered around her chair. One evening in November, as the three of them sat together reading, Emma did something extraordinary. She took out her notebook and wrote, "Iris can be my grandma?" The question hung in the air like a prayer. Iris felt her heart crack wide open. All those years of regret, of missed opportunities with her own daughter, of believing she'd lost her chance at family. And here was this precious child asking if she could belong to her. "Yes?" Iris whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Emma. I would love that more than anything in the world." Emma crawled into Iris's lap, something she hadn't done with anyone since Sarah died. And Iris held her. This child who wasn't hers by blood, but was hers in every way that mattered, and sobbed with a release so profound it felt like resurrection. Daniel watched them with his own tears falling freely. "Thank you," he said to Iris. "You gave her back to me. You gave us both back." "You gave me back too," Iris said. "You gave me a reason to keep living." The breakthrough came on a Tuesday in December, exactly 2 months after Emma had found Iris's library card. They were at the library as usual. Iris was reading aloud from Charlotte's Web, and Emma was curled up in her usual chair, following along in her own copy. Daniel sat nearby, doing paperwork from his warehouse job, but mostly just watching these two people who had become his lifeline. Iris reached the part where Charlotte dies, where the wise spider who had saved Wilbur's life slips away quietly, her purpose fulfilled. It was a passage Iris had read hundreds of times to hundreds of students, but reading it to Emma, knowing this child's history with death and loss, made the words catch in her throat. "It is not often that someone comes along who is a true friend and a good writer," Iris read, her voice thick with emotion. Charlotte was both. Emma had tears running down her cheeks, dropping onto the pages of her book. And then she spoke. Not a full sentence. Not a conversation. Just one word. So quiet that at first Iris thought she'd imagined it. "Don't." Iris froze. Daniel's head snapped up. They both stared at Emma with something between terror and hope, afraid that if they moved or breathed wrong, the fragile moment would shatter. Emma looked at Iris with those solemn green eyes, tears still falling, and whispered it again, louder this time. Don't want her to die." "Oh, sweetheart," Iris said, setting down the book and pulling Emma close. I know it hurts, but Charlotte's love doesn't die. It lives on in her babies, in Wilbur, in everyone she touched. Love never really dies, Emma." Your mama's love is still with you. Every single day. And then Emma said something that broke both adults completely. I miss Mama. I miss her voice. I wanted to tell her I love her, but the car came too fast, and I didn't say it. I didn't say goodbye. The words tumbled out between sobs. 2 years of locked-away grief finally finding release. Daniel dropped to his knees beside them, wrapping his arms around both Emma and Iris, and all three of them cried together. She knew, baby, Daniel said through his tears. She knew you loved her. You didn't need to say the words. She knew. But I want to say them now, Emma sobbed. I want to talk again. I want to tell you I love you, Daddy. I want to tell Iris she's my best friend. I want my voice back. Then take it back, Iris said firmly, cupping Emma's face in her weathered hands. It's yours, Emma. It's always been yours. Take it back whenever you're ready. From that night forward, Emma spoke. Hesitantly at first, her voice rusty from disuse. But gradually, steadily, words came back to her like birds returning after winter. She told Iris about the accident, about the nightmares, about the guilt she'd been carrying. She talked to her father about missing her mother, about being scared that she'd forget what Sarah looked like. And most importantly, she started laughing again. That pure, uninhibited laughter of childhood that Daniel had thought he'd never hear again. The transformation wasn't just Emma's. Daniel found himself opening up too, talking about his fears and failures with Iris in a way he'd never been able to before. She became his confidant, his advisor, the wise elder he'd never had in his life. When Daniel mentioned that he was thinking about going back to teaching, about applying for positions that would let him have the same schedule as Emma, Iris encouraged him fiercely. You have a gift, she told him. The way you talk about books, about stories, that's not something you should waste in a warehouse. Emma needs to see her father pursuing his dreams. That's how she'll learn to pursue hers. So Daniel applied, used Iris as a reference, her Princeton credentials opening doors his warehouse experience never could. Within 2 months, he had a position at a private school just outside Riverside. Better pay, better hours, and the chance to do work that mattered again. But the most beautiful change was in Iris herself. For the first time in decades, she had a family. Emma called her Grandma Iris without hesitation. Daniel consulted her on everything from Emma's nightmares to what to cook for dinner. They included her in everything: school events, doctor's appointments, even just grocery shopping trips. When Christmas came, Daniel and Emma surprised Iris by showing up at her senior facility apartment with decorations and homemade cookies. You shouldn't be alone, Emma said firmly, her voice growing stronger every day. Family is together at Christmas. Iris had cried, overwhelmed by the kindness she'd never expected to receive, grateful for the second chance she'd stopped believing was possible. The call came on a cold January morning. Daniel was at school, teaching his first period English class about poetry, when his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. He normally wouldn't answer during class, but something made him check. It was Jennifer Tanaka, Iris's daughter. Mr. Foster? My mother listed you as her emergency contact. She's had a stroke. She's at Riverside General. The world tilted. Daniel ended class early, picked up Emma from school, and they raced to the hospital. The entire drive, Emma kept repeating, she has to be okay. She has to be okay. Please, God, let her be okay. When they found Jennifer in the waiting room, she looked nothing like Daniel expected. Iris had shown them pictures, a polished businesswoman in designer suits. But this woman looked haunted, her expensive clothes rumpled, her eyes red from crying. "You're Daniel," she said, not quite a question. "And Emma, how is she?" Daniel asked urgently. "Stable. She was lucky. They got her here fast. But the doctors say she can't live alone anymore. She needs someone to take care of her." Jennifer's voice cracked. "I live in San Francisco. My job, my life, it's all there. I can't just uproot everything. I've been looking at nursing homes in the area, places that take her insurance." "No," Emma said firmly. "Grandma Iris isn't going to a nursing home." Jennifer looked at this little girl with confusion and a flash of something that might have been jealousy. "Grandma, she's our family," Emma said simply. "She saved my life. Now we save hers." Daniel had made the decision before Emma even finished speaking. "She'll live with us." "You can't," Jennifer started. "Yes, I can. I have a spare bedroom. Emma and I, we're good at taking care of people. And Iris isn't just anyone to us. She's family. The real kind." When they were finally allowed to see Iris, she looked small and frail in the hospital bed, so different from the strong woman who'd become their anchor. But when she saw Emma, her face transformed with relief and love. "My girl," Iris whispered, her words slightly slurred from the stroke. "My Emma." "I'm here, Grandma Iris," Emma said, climbing carefully onto the bed to curl up beside her. "And I'm not leaving. You're coming home with us." Iris looked at Daniel, tears streaming down her face. "I can't ask that of you." "You're not asking," Daniel said firmly. "We're telling you. You gave us our lives back. Now let us take care of you." Jennifer watched this exchange with something breaking open in her chest. She'd spent 3 decades building walls between herself and her mother, nursing grudges and resentment. And now here were these strangers who had built a family with Iris in just a few months. "I'm sorry," Jennifer said suddenly, the words directed at her mother. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I've been so angry for so long. And I missed everything. I missed the chance to know you, to love you the way they love you." Iris reached out a trembling hand to her biological daughter. "It's not too late. It's never too late for family." Iris recovered slowly but steadily. The stroke had left her with some weakness on her left side, but her mind remained sharp, and her spirit, if anything, grew stronger. She moved into Daniel and Emma's spare bedroom, the one that had been sitting empty since they'd moved in. Emma helped her decorate it, hanging pictures of all of them together. Their chosen family, built from pain and healed by love. Jennifer started visiting. Once a month at first, then more frequently. The relationship between mother and daughter would never be simple or easy, but it was real in a way it had never been before. They were learning to talk to each other, to see past the hurt to the people they actually were. Emma thrived. Her voice grew stronger every day, and with it came confidence and joy that Daniel had feared were lost forever. She joined the school choir, made friends, and even started writing her own stories. Tales of magic and healing in families that choose each other. Daniel became the teacher he'd always wanted to be. With Iris's help watching Emma after school, he could stay late for tutoring sessions, coach the debate team, really invest in his students. He even started dating again, something he'd thought was impossible. Nothing serious yet, but the possibility of happiness felt real for the first time since Sarah. On Tuesday evenings, they still went to the library. All 3 of them, sometimes with Jennifer when she visited. They'd sit in Iris's old chair. Emma had made sure the library staff reserved it permanently for them, and read together, 3 souls who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful from the broken pieces. One evening, As they were leaving the library, Emma stopped at the entrance and looked back at the building that had saved them all. "Daddy," she said thoughtfully, "do you think other people could be helped like we were?" "What do you mean, Emma Bear?" "I mean, what if we started something, like a reading program for kids who can't talk or don't want to talk? We could find volunteers like Grandma Iris, people who are lonely and need purpose. And we could match them with kids who need someone to see them, just like what happened to us." Daniel looked at Iris, who was wiping tears from her eyes. "I think," Iris said, her voice still slightly slurred but full of strength, "that is the most beautiful idea I've ever heard." Within 6 months, the Silent Stories program was born. Iris coordinated it from their living room, matching elderly volunteers with children struggling with selective mutism or severe anxiety. The program paired them for weekly library visits, giving both sides something they desperately needed: connection, purpose, and proof that healing is possible. The program grew beyond anything they imagined. News outlets covered it. Other cities reached out to start their own chapters. Emma became something of a spokesperson, this brave girl who'd found her voice again and was helping others find theirs. But for Daniel, Iris, and Emma, the program's success wasn't really the point. The point was the three of them together, this improbable family that shouldn't work on paper but worked perfectly in practice. On the anniversary of the day Emma found Iris's library card, they celebrated with cake and candles at their small apartment. Emma made a wish before blowing out the candles, but she didn't keep it secret. "I wish that everyone who feels lost could find their family like we found each other," she said. "That everyone who thinks it's too late could get a second chance." "It's a good wish," Iris said, pulling Emma close. "The best wish." Daniel looked at these two people who had saved his daughter and, in doing so, saved him too. "You know what the crazy thing is?" he said. "A year and a half ago, I thought my life was over. I thought Emma and I were just surviving, barely holding on. And now we're living," Iris finished. "Really, truly living." That night, after Emma was asleep and Iris had gone to her room, Daniel sat alone in the living room thinking about the journey they'd been on, about how a lost library card had become a found family, about how the most broken people sometimes heal each other in ways nobody expects. He thought about Sarah, about how she'd always believed that love was the answer to everything. She'd been right. Not romantic love necessarily, though that was beautiful too. But this kind of love, the kind that shows up in libraries and hospital rooms, the kind that says you matter to people who've forgotten what matching feels like, the kind that builds families from strangers and healing from heartbreak. Sarah would have loved Iris, would have adored watching Emma find her voice again, would have been proud of the man Daniel was becoming. "I hope you can see this," he whispered to the air, to the memory, to whatever part of Sarah still existed in the universe. "I hope you know we're going to be okay, that Emma's going to be okay, that we found our way back." In her bedroom, Emma lay awake, thinking similar thoughts. She could almost hear her mother's voice sometimes, feel her presence in the way Iris braided her hair or the way Daniel read her bedtime stories. Sarah was gone, but the love she'd left behind was still here, flowing through everyone who loved Emma, keeping her safe. And in the third bedroom, Iris lay in her bed, surrounded by photos of her newly expanded family, and marveled at the miracle of second chances. At 71 years old, she had her daughter back, had a granddaughter who wasn't her blood but was her heart, had a son in Daniel who treated her with the respect and love she'd never quite earned but was learning to accept. She thought about all those years she'd spent alone in the library, believing her story was over. and she realized something profound. It's never too late. As long as you're breathing, as long as you're willing to open your heart one more time, there's a chance for redemption. Family isn't about biology. It's about choice. About who shows up when you're falling apart. About who stays when leaving would be easier. About who sees your broken pieces and helps you arrange them into something new and beautiful. Emma, Daniel, and Iris had found each other in the midst of their separate tragedies. They'd been three people drowning in their own pain, and somehow, impossibly, they'd saved each other. This story isn't just about Emma and Daniel and Iris. It's about every person who's ever felt invisible, forgotten, or too broken to fix. It's about the healing power of being truly seen by another human being. It's about understanding that family is something you build, not just something you're born into. Emma's silence wasn't weakness. It was survival. Daniel's struggle wasn't failure. It was love. And Iris's loneliness wasn't punishment. It was just waiting for the right people to finally see her. One lost library card. One traumatized child. One widowed father. One lonely elder. These ingredients shouldn't have added up to healing. But they did. Because that's how miracles work. Not in the ways we expect, but in the ways we need most. So here's my question for you. Who in your life needs to be seen? Who needs someone to show up for them when showing up is hard? Who's waiting for their own lost library card moment? That small thing that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that it's never too late to build a family or find healing or start again, then I need you to do something. First, subscribe to this channel right now. Join our family of people who believe in the power of stories to change hearts and heal wounds. We're building something beautiful here, and you're part of it. Second, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. That person who's drowning in grief. That elderly neighbor who seems lonely. That colleague who's struggling. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know their story isn't over. And third, look for your own moment to be someone's Iris. To see someone else's pain and not turn away. To show up even when it's inconvenient. To build family with people who need you as much as you need them. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting alone, believing they've missed their chance at happiness. Someone is fighting to survive and forgetting how to live. Someone is waiting for a person like you to show them that hope is real and healing is possible, and family is something you can create at any age, in any circumstance, if you're brave enough to try. Until next time, keep believing that second chances are real. Keep showing up for the broken and the lost. And remember, the smallest acts of kindness can save someone's entire life. We'll see you in the next story. Now go out there and be somebody's miracle today.